Hi, Derek here, welcome back to my channel. Okay, so we've had a quick look at the camera raw module, and you can see we managed to raise the shadows. We bumped up the saturation in some parts and not others, and we've mucked about with the vibrance. Another part I would like to do before we go into, if we go back to the HSL tab, and we also grab the targeted adjustment tool, I would like a bit more colour in these stones. These are pink and that's sandstone, and they look almost the same. So to get a little bit colour in here with this tool here, we could drag down to desaturate and drag up, or sorry, drag to the right on this cage to add a bit more saturation. Now that's all fine and well, but it's also affecting the sandstone on here. So we'll drop that back down a little bit. So we do want to do that. So in Photoshop, we're going to make a bit of a selection, particularly off this sort of area here. And the wonderful thing about Photoshop, we can come back and forward, and we can go into Photoshop, do whatever we want to through there, and then we can come back into Camera Raw and do more adjustments here. And one other thing that I've never mentioned was this here, Snapshots. And you probably should do this each and every time that you do a kind of major change, especially a change in colour. Because if we do a snapshot now, and you give it a name, okay. If we go back to this HSL and just say I want to do this adjustment now, and you know, it actually looks okay, and I'm going to stick with that. And then we do another 4 or 5 different adjustments after that. Maybe we'll straighten it randomly bad, like so. And we do lots and lots of changes, and we actually forget where we were. We can go back into here at any point and double click on a snapshot, and you can have create your own history as you go along. You can have 1 snapshot or 50 snapshots, it doesn't matter, but it means you can just go back to a state where you were happy. Maybe you added a little bit too much of one thing and not the other, or you cropped it wrong. So it's definitely worth keeping in mind. I'm going to add a little bit more pink in here and a little bit more colour in there into the oranges, and that's not really having any effect at all, the pink, and this one certainly won't. Okay, we'll leave it at that. So now we're going to go into Photoshop, and as I say, we can come back to here at any time we want. So we'll click on Open Image. There's other options when you open the image. You could hold down the Alt key and open a copy. Hold down the Shift key and open it as an object. Before we get into any of that, I'm just going to open an image into the Photoshop, and it'll take a few seconds because I've got my camera recording the screen here. So I'll just leave it to do its thing. And now it's open. Now when you open up in Photoshop, you always open up a background incident. That's the default. The thing about a background incident, you can't do too much to it. The layer's locked, etc. So we can just quickly press here to unlock it, and we can quickly duplicate the layer. Now, to duplicate a layer, you can right click, go to duplicate layer, and you can go up to the layer menu and go to duplicate layer. But before we go into any of the stuff with this image, in fact we could probably be here without the image, I'll just explain what some of these are. You have this here, let's go back to, this is my setup for my personal preference. This is what I have. When you take it out of the box, when you first install, this will be your setup. You won't have Perfect Effects 9 or Perfect Portrait sitting there. Excuse me. You'll have your layers panel, and the adjustments you can make them in 2 ways. Now I'm going to duplicate the layer, so I'm just going to right click and duplicate layer. We'll give it no name at all, layer copy. You can make adjustments from here. Up in the image adjustments, and if you look through here, you've got all these different things, or you can make them from down here. Now there's two different. We'll take one and we'll look at brightness and contrast. So if we go up to image, have a layer highlighted, go to image adjustments, and brightness and contrast, and we're just going to whack the brightness up. Click OK. Now if I want to undo that, I can undo it, but if I want to just reduce it a little bit, I would have to undo it and then go through the whole process again. I've gone up here, image adjustment. This adjustment I've just done, when you're doing it from up here, it always affects the top layer or whatever layer you happen to have highlighted. Sometimes you can have 20 layers here and you can have one highlighted, do an adjustment from up here, then go work in 2 or 3 different areas. And the problem with that is that you forget where you did the adjustment on. I mean, you could name it. Here, say brightness layer, and you could turn the layer off or on. Or these eyeballs here, if you want to turn a layer off, you just click on the eyeball and that turns it off, and any adjustments you've done to that are also turned off. The better way to do it is to come down to here, and when you open them from here, brightness and contrast, forget this just now, we can close it off. It comes up with two things. It comes up with a mask, and I'll explain what a mask is in a minute, and it comes up with the properties dialog box. So if I can clip this on here just now, let's click it and up to here, and I'll put it to there. There we go. So when we're on the properties dialog, again we'll give it another double click and take my layers down a little bit. Give me a second. And you can have these layers and things set up however you want. This will do me just now. So when we're on the properties dialog box, we can turn it up there, and we might think actually that's too bright, we can turn it back down. I can go and work on any number of new layers. I could bring another layer in. We can turn that back up to here. I might want to do some cloning. Maybe I want to have an extra chimney, and we'll just, for the sake of it, we'll draw it over there. Okay, so we've got an extra chimney over there, and I think that looks pretty naff. I can turn the brightness down. It's affecting that layer and that layer. But after 20 or 30 moves with this brush, I might think, you know what, that looks absolutely terrible. I need to turn the brightness back down. I then have the option to go back in and readjust the brightness, which I don't have when I do it from up here. So something to bear in mind. I need to just shorten this down a little bit. It's a wee bit long. I'll put it in there, it's better. So that's something to bear in mind. So we'll get rid of that layer here, and we'll get rid of that. To get rid of a layer, you just left click on it, drag it over the little waste bin, and then you're rid of it. And I'm back through this copy layer. And this copy layer, which I made too bright, I can't undo that now. There's so many different moves that I've done in between that, so I would have to just delete that layer totally and start again. So that's why you always make a copy of your background layer. Always duplicate that layer. And in the next video we're going to start looking at what these panels are, what they do, and some of the adjustments that you can do using adjustment layers.